Welcome back to Starkiller Base. Today is the start of our card analysis series for the Legacies set, and we're starting off with the blue villains from the set. So let's get underway. So the first card here we have is the Dark Advisor. He has 8 hit points. He's an 8 cost character. He's non-unique. The dice sides read a 1 indirect, 2 indirect, 1 focus, 1 resource, a special, and a blank. The special says draw 3 cards, then place a card from your hand on the top or bottom of your deck. So definitely an interesting card. I mean, you can't argue with money, focus, and damage. The indirect damage is less than ideal, especially with all the modified melee damage that you see in Blue Villain. But it could be something. I actually was toying around with the idea of building a Dark Advisor Quinlan, or Dark Advisor Kylo deck, and then just trying to use Dark Advisor specials to draw a whole bunch of cards up. You either use Quinlan's ability to do a lot of damage or throw a No Mercy out there. As it stands, I'm not sure that they'll see a lot of play in Constructed. In a draft setting, getting card draw and money and damage and focus and all that sort of stuff and access to blue for only 8 points is not terrible. But yeah, and that art is kind of weird. All right, let's move on. Next we have Maul, the Vengeful One. He has 11 hit points. He's a 12/16. His die sides show a 2 melee, a 3 melee for 1, a disrupt, a discard, a resource, and a blank. His character ability reads, after one or more of this character's character or upgrade dice are removed by an opponent's card effect, you may remove one of their dice. So definitely an interesting ability. He's pretty well costed. His die sides are not bad. I'm not in love with the disrupt and the discard, but they're not terrible, I suppose. 16 points for an elite with 11 hit points is not bad. His character ability is really interesting though, because if you just pile all your upgrades on Maul, then there's all kinds of dice that you're rolling in that if your opponent removes any of them, you can punish them with it. And it is repeatable. So if, you know, say I flank one of the Maul's character dice, I can use the ability, and then say I reroll the Maul character rerolls into better stuff. If I mitigated another one, then you can do it again. You can get around that, of course, by not having any dice rolled in when you mitigate theirs, or not having anything you care about, I suppose. The other thing that's interesting on it is it says removed by an opponent's card effect. So if you had something like Ray's staff remove it, that is not a card effect, I don't believe. So I'm not sure that would trigger his ability or not. If you know better than me, let me know in the comments below. Next up, we have Mother Talzin, the Night Sister Matriarch. She's a 9/12, which is nice and cheap. 9 hit points, not bad for cost. Her die sides show a 1 ranged, a 2 ranged, a 1 focus, 1 discard, 1 resource, and a blank. Her character ability says, after you activate this character, you may reveal the top card of a player's deck. If it costs an odd number, turn one of that player's dice to any side. So, really interesting ability here. Her dice are great for her cost. She's got a decent number of hit points. One thing about her ability you need to keep in mind is, let's say that I roll in my Mother Talzin and I'm okay with my dice, but you have a dangerous die like a 3 melee and a +3 melee or something like that. I cannot, like the way that it's worded is that I need to reveal the top card of your deck to turn one of your dice, or the top card of my deck to fix one of my dice. So when Mother Talzin builds a deck, you can build a deck where you've got a whole bunch of odd numbered dice in there. So you're a lot more likely to be able to fix your own dice than your opponent's. But, you know, if you don't have any die control and someone's going to die from it, then at least it's a shot of fixing it. And there's another card here in Crystal Ball where you'll see that it allows, if you put it on Mother Talzin, she can look at the top card of a deck. So she could look at her opponent's deck to see whether it's an odd or even. And then she can use her ability afterwards. Say I looked at it, your card was a 2 cost, then there's no point in using her ability on your die, so I'll just use it on my deck and fix one of my dice because it's wasted. So yeah, she's very powerful. She goes great with Kylo 2. I've seen her in 5-die villain decks, so she's definitely versatile and definitely dangerous. Next up we have Palpatine, Darth Sidious. He is a 16/20, 12 hit points. His die sides show a 2 ranged, a 2 melee, a 2 indirect, a resource, and a blank. He has a power action. Remember, power actions are, you're allowed to take that action once per round. It says, play an event from your hand, decreasing its cost by the number of different damage symbols showing on your dice. So definitely an interesting card. At 1620, you can't put a lot with him. I've seen him paired with a Gamorrean guard to keep him alive a bit longer and provide some more damage sides. Also with one of the new stormtroopers. Definitely interesting though. The problem I've had with building this deck is that you put all these. He enables you to play all these awesome cards. Like you can play Endless Ranks for cheaper, Rise Again, It Will All Be Mine, Snare, all sorts of stuff like that, which is really good. But the problem is, say my opponent rolls in and gets a bunch of blanks. If I haven't rolled in and I've only got $2, I can't use his ability to play It Will All Be Mine. And by the time I've rolled in to get damage sides, my opponent will probably have re-rolled and got rid of that. And the other time, of course, is when Palpatine dies, you're sitting there with a handful of cards that are really expensive that you can't play. So it's a tricky deck to build because you sort of want to have like one power actionable event in your hand per turn, but not 3. So, you know, how many is too many, right? It's interesting. I do like the other Palpatine better, but it's hard to argue with 2 resource sides and 3 2 damage sides. Those are some good dice. Next up, we have Force Rend. That is a very unfortunate looking Rebel Trooper there. It is a 3-cost upgrade ability. It's blue character only. The die sides show a 2 ranged, a +2 ranged, a 1 resource, a special, and a blank. The special reads, spend resources equal to the cost of a supporter upgrade and play to discard it. So it's an interesting card. You can use Holocron to get in, of course. It is blue character only, so you can't play it on another character unless you have Holocron doing it. It's got damage sides, which are ranged, which there aren't too many characters that are blue that have ranged damage. But, I mean, I'll take a 2 and a +2 any day. The special is the interesting part, of course. Spend resources equal to the cost of a supporter upgrade and play to discard it. So, yes, you may not want to use it all the time, but against certain decks, like a mill deck, where you can get rid of C-3PO and Scrapyard and Bespin Wingguard for 1, that's not bad. I mean, it doesn't feed into the I'm going to kill you part of it when you're playing an aggro deck, but sometimes it is better to just slow your opponent down a bit or take away some key cards. I mean, if you've got a decent economy engine, you can get rid of a second chance. You can get rid of Force Illusion when you're playing aggro versus aggro or whatever. It's very versatile. I think it was Tiny Grimes was playing it in his Kylo 2 Mother Talzin deck, and he had it included because A, it's a odd numbered card, so it works with Talzin's ability and Witch Magic and spell removal and all that sort of stuff. But on top of that, you know, if you're playing a matchup that doesn't really require the Force Rend special, then don't play it, right? And I mean, if you have a Holocron on board and you roll a special and Force Rend is the only ability you have in your hand, then I wouldn't be too sad to see it come out for free. So, hey, why not? Next up, we have the Big Daddy. We have Mauls Lightsaber. It is unique. It is a weapon. It costs 3. The die sides show a 2 melee, a +2 melee, a +3 melee, a +4 melee, a resource, and a blank. It is blue character only and is a power action. If an opponent has no shields on all of their characters, roll this die into your pool. This card is bonkers good. It's been, ever since it was spoiled, people have been saying it's good, and it has not disappointed. It is one of the centerpieces to the 7th Sister 1-turn kill deck. You roll 7th Sister in, you say you get a 1 melee on the 7th Sister die and a melee on one of the ID9 Secret Droid dice, and then a +3 on the Mauls Saber. You resolve the +3 with one of the 1s to do 4 damage, and then you use the power action to roll it back in, and half the time you're going to be rolling a modified side, so that's why you leave that other 1 melee out. And, you know, even if you have no other dice in the pool and you just happen to have the power action available to you, roll it in. Maybe you'll hit the 2 melee or the resource, and it's better than nothing. Also, with the advent of cards like Legacies, which allows you to resolve a side with a modifier as if it didn't have a modifier, if you roll it back in and hit the +4 and you happen to have Legacies in hand, bam, take 4 damage, sir. It's a great card. It is very dangerous. Obviously, it's susceptible to removal in that if I get rid of the base melee sides that you've got, then it's not going to do much. But for the cost and the power it has, it is pretty amazing. Next up, we have Kylo Ren's Starfighter. It is a unique 2-cost support vehicle. Its die sides show a 1 ranged, a 2 ranged, a 1 shield, a special, and a blank. The special reads, choose a color, then reveal an opponent's hand and deal indirect damage to them equal to the number of cards in their hand that match the chosen color. So if I'm playing against a mono deck and I roll in and hit this special, and I say yellow, and you've got 4 yellow cards and 1 gray card in your hand, you have to do 4 indirect damage to your characters. It's a lot of damage, and it actually really feeds well with Kylo 2's ability, where he just eats monocolored decks. You know, for 2 costs, the die is great. 2 specials is a lot better than 1. If it had, you know, 1 special and a disrupt size instead of the other special, I would like it a lot less. However, even if you roll in the thing, hit the special, call blue, and do 1 indirect damage to your opponent, or even 0, you've looked at their hands. So you've got that hand knowledge regardless of whether it hits any damage or not. Obviously, you want it to hit damage, but so as long as you can afford the speed of having to roll in a support, then it's a great include. Obviously, if you've got Mother Talzin and Force Rend and other range damage sides, then the 1 and the 2 range damage on this die are great additions, because there's no pay and there's no modified. And you know, if you run into a rainbow deck, you don't have to play it out. So hey, I'd probably put a copy of that in just about every blue villain deck, just as an include, just in case you run into a mono, because it puts some pretty serious pressure on them. Next up we have Crystal Ball, which I spoke briefly about earlier. It is a 1 cost upgrade equipment. Its die sides show a 1 focus, a 1 focus, a 1 resource, a +1 resource, a blank, and a blank. And it says, after you activate attached character, you may look at the top card of a deck. So first of all, it's odd, which is great with Mother Talzin. Second of all, it allows you to look at the top card of your deck or the top card of your opponent's deck. So if you're trying to use Mother Talzin's ability, like I said earlier, and you want to see if I can fix one of your dice, if I put this on Talzin, I can, because I control Talzin and the Crystal Ball, I can choose to use the Crystal Ball's ability first. Look at the top card of your deck, which you cannot see. It says you may look at, not you may reveal. So the person that has the Crystal Ball gets to look at the card and doesn't have to show it to their opponent. Not to mention the fact that it is a 1 cost die with 2 focus, which provides consistency, and 2 resource sides, which provides ramp. I mean, I love it. It's a great card. It's not one of those, you know, big heavy hitter Mauls Lightsaber type things, but it is the bread and butter of a lot of decks. It's fantastic in draft because, again, 1 cost die. So it doesn't matter. As long as you got blue in your draft deck, bring the Crystal Ball. It's amazing. Let's move on to the non-die cards for the set here. We start off with Consumed by the Dark Side, a 0 cost event. Deal 1 damage to one of your blue characters to turn a die to a side showing a blank. So not a bad little card. It's sort of like Manipulate, except it has a different cost. Obviously, dealing a damage to one of your blue characters is not necessarily a good thing, and your opponent's die that you want to change may not have a blank, particularly when we've got Yoda nowadays. But it's not a bad card, and it's free. Or at least it doesn't have a monetary cost, I should say. Next one we have is Dark Scheme. It is a 1 cost event. Look at the top 5 cards of an opponent's deck. Discard one of them and place the rest on the top of their deck in the order of your choice. Kind of an interesting card. I think it would be a lot better if you didn't draw 5 cards a turn. Like in Game of Thrones LCG, you draw 2 cards a turn, so being able to manipulate 5 would be a big deal. But in this case, you know, obviously discarding one of the cards is pretty good, especially if you're playing a mill deck. You know, you look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck and you say, okay, that one of those 5 is the best card. Get rid of it. So from that aspect, it's good. It doesn't kill your opponent, so it's sort of one of those cards that helps you win indirectly. I wouldn't run it in an aggro deck personally, but it's definitely got a place in some decks. Next, we have Double Strike. It is a 2 cost event. It says resolve one of your dice showing melee damage without removing it from your pool. Not bad. It's kind of like My Ally is the Force, but more specific and doesn't have ambush, unfortunately. I mean, I guess if it had ambush, it'd be pretty bonkers. If we played it with Sith Lord Vader, you could do 3 damage and then still have it there for next action to do 3 more, which is kind of cool. $2 is a little bit expensive, so, you know, will it see any play? I don't know. It doesn't speed things up. It actually slows the deck down in a sense because you're resolving your dice twice as it takes twice as long to do it, but it is definitely aggressive. Next we have Frighten. It is a 1 cost event. It has ambush. Remove a total of up to 3 shields from any number of characters. I really like this one. The ambush is great. It's sort of similar to Intimidate, but the 3 shields can come from any number of characters. So where before your opponent, would put 1 shield on each character if they thought you ran Intimidate, now it doesn't matter. Of course, it's got that 1 cost, so it's pretty well balanced. It'll be interesting because it'll be the best shield removal available once the Awakening cycle is gone, or when you're playing Trilogy. But yeah, it's a pretty cool card. All right, next we have I Am Your Father. It's a 2-cost event. It says resolve an opponent's character die as if it were your own unless that opponent discards all cards from their hand. Kind of interesting. It reminds me of Abandon All Hope. Of course, one of those cards where if you have no cards in hand, then this does nothing. There's a lot of characters, particularly in the current meta, where their dice, 1 character die is not really that big a deal. Like Poe 2 rolls in and hits a special, and you say, I'm your father on the Poe 2 special. I'd probably just let you resolve the special, personally, especially if I had some stuff in my hand that I was in love with. On top of that, it costs 2, which is kind of rough, but it's best used in a mill deck, I want to say, because you want to discard your opponent's entire hand. However, they don't care if you resolve one of their character dice, like a 3 damage even, because you're not doing damage to them in a mill deck, so does it matter? I don't know. Next we have Snare. It is a 3-cost event. Play only if you have 1 or more exhausted characters. Exhaust a character. This card is amazing if you can afford it. It's pretty good in the new Palpatine because you can play it for 2 after you've rolled him in. But it can definitely blow out some turns. I mean, if you roll in your character first action because you got Snare in hand, you got $3. Your opponent plays yet another upgrade on their big character. Boom, Snare, and you've just blown out their turn. It's pretty good. Spell of Removal is next. It is a 1-cost event. It says spot a blue character to discard the top card of a deck. If it costs an odd number, remove a die. This is the first of the 3 cards that we'll see here that talk about odd numbered cards. So this one is interesting because it is a mill card, and on top of that, it's a removal card. So if you build your own deck to be full of odd number cards, then it's a good card because you can pay 1 to guarantee remove a die almost. Unfortunately, it costs you the card in your hand and then the top card of your deck as well, which could be bad. On the other hand, if you use it on your opponent to remove a die and discard one of their cards, it's doubly good. But the problem is you can't guarantee your opponent's deck is full of odd number cards. If you use Crystal Ball and happen to know that there's an odd number card on top of their deck, or even if it's say there's an even numbered card on top of their deck, but it's a very crucial card for their deck, and you know that it's there because you crystal balled their deck, then paying 1 to discard it could actually be pretty good, even if it doesn't remove a die. Next we have Witch Magic. It's a 1-cost event. It says reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Do not rearrange them. Heal damage from a character equal to the number of cards you just revealed that cost an odd number. You can see how this would be pretty good. Field Medic is pay 1 to heal 2. This could be, this is pay 1 to heal up to 3. If you build your deck properly, then it's almost guaranteed to heal 3 or at least 2, which is pretty good. And of course, I can't compare Witch Magic and Field Medic directly because it's apples and oranges, because it's the villain versus hero, red versus blue. You'll never see them in the same deck. So it's a pretty good card though in the right deck. And then we have Night Sister Covenant. It is a 1-cost support. It says after a character die rolls a blank, you may exhaust this support to reveal the top card of a deck. If it costs an odd number, deal 1 damage to that character. So again, if you build a deck that's full of odd number cards, then you can almost guarantee that every time an opponent rolls a character die that's blank, you can deal damage to that character. It's sort of a war of attrition in that sense. It is non-unique, which means you could have 2 out, which could be pretty nasty. I had it happen to me in draft, actually. It hit me 4 times. I was playing, and this is draft, right? So it's a 3-character list with each character having 1 character die, and it wasn't even a character that had 2 blanks. It just so happened that, I roll in Maul and I hit a blank 2 or 3 times, which may or may not be statistically accurate, but it did happen. I didn't get hit with the damage all the time because my opponent was misreading the card, and he was, well, I guess it doesn't really matter in draft because you're not building a deck that's full of odd number cards, but he kept picking my deck to reveal the cards, so I guess he was going for information on what cards I had coming up. and hey, if it does damage, why not? So Night Sister Coven it's an interesting card. I'm not sure that it'll see a lot of play, but Spell Removal and Witch Magic are definitely good cards and would go in Talzin decks and that sort of thing. That wraps up with the blue villain cards for Legacies. Keep an eye out for the next edition of our card analysis series coming soon. Thanks for watching Starkiller Base.